Welcome to Catching Up with Nina, our podcast series where we discuss issues relative and pertinent to Michigan principals. This is Nina Davis, your Associate Director of Member Services and Engagement at Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's chat. Hello, I am here today with another feature for our Assist publication. Today, we're going to talk about the last 2 years being especially difficult on schools, assistant principals, things like the pandemic, safety concerns. The nature of schools have just changed, and this has changed how schools have conducted their standard operating procedures. So today, I have the privilege to speak with Miss Ebony Carter, who is an assistant principal at the largest high school in the state, Dakota High School. So good morning, Miss Carter.
Good morning. Good morning.
So we're so happy to have you here just to talk about some of the operating procedures at Dakota and how those have changed. But first, we want to talk about you and just feature you a little bit here today. So can you talk to us about your educational background and just anything else that you'd like to share about yourself?
Sure, I would love to. So first and foremost, thank you for this opportunity to share this information and just be a part of this session. I am born and raised in Mount Clemens. I am a native, and I graduated from Mount Clemens High School. Always had a passion for education, and so it was just natural for me to want to go into education. I did my bachelor's. Actually, I have a bachelor's in math, a BS in math, and that was from Grambling State University. And so through that process, sometimes you know that you want to do something, but you kind of run from it. So I was going to try my time in the industry, corporate. And so I had the math major, but education just pulled me in. And so I ended up finishing up with my master's and getting my certification from Saginaw Valley through their accelerated program. Very amazing program for people that realize later in their life that they want to be an educator. They make it very accessible. And spent, 11 years teaching math between, first started off at Mount Clemens, went back and taught at my alma mater, Mount Clemens High School, teaching math, and left for a couple of years and moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Had an amazing opportunity to work at a school that was under state control. So I gained a lot of experience through that process and ended up coming back and landing a position as a math teacher at Dakota High School. Also, let me back up a little bit. My master's program also included, it was principalship. So I finished with my certification. So once I came back to Dakota, I was able to do a couple years in the classroom. We have an amazing community, very unique. So I had to spend some time getting to know them and them getting to know me. And 2 years later, I was able to transition into assistant principalship job where I have been. That started in 2015. And so it's been an interesting journey. And especially through the pandemic, we learned a lot about education. We learned a lot about ourselves and a lot about the world. So that pretty much sums it up.
Well, I love that you have the wide range of experience. It sounds like you have some urban, some suburban, out of state. And that's, to me, that's important that you have different experiences to bring to the table of education because you understand the different experiences of your stakeholders. So I think that's really important to have that background.
Absolutely. One more lens that I have, and this is part of the job that I do enjoy doing, but I don't get to do it as much, is college, talking about college, because I didn't mention it. I don't mention it a lot, but I have diverse background in that area. My first 2 years of undergrad was at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. So I was a Wolverine for 2 years. I was first generation college student. And so just through that process and just wasn't prepared. Prepare academically, did well, but the transition and not understanding how things work on a university that size. I was there during some pretty intense racial unrest. And so I ended up transferring into Grambling State University. And for those of you that don't know, Grambling State University is an historically Black college and university, an HBCU. So not only do I have a dual lens in terms of urban education and suburban, Southern and Northern, I also have a dual lens in terms of university life regarding Big Ten versus HBCU. And I have come to appreciate the layers that it has provided me to be able to help so many different types of students and families. So just wanted to throw that in there because it definitely contributes to my ability to do what I do every day.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. And I'm taking notes here because I'd like to have you on another episode where we can talk about college readiness and post-secondary opportunities that exist. So let's get into the safety and standard operating procedures. So I'm going to just dig right in and ask you specific questions regarding backpacks. So okay. Are those allowed at all at Dakota? Are students allowed to carry them around schools? Are there specific kinds that are allowed? Just what is the general policy on backpacks?
So obviously it has transitioned from when I first started. I remember being a new teacher and one of my APs at the time came into my room because I had a student that managed to get into my room with a backpack because we were so serious about not having backpacks at that time. It was based upon a couple of things, obviously the safety in terms of not knowing what's in the backpack, but more so than anything, Dakota being the size that it was, it really was a tripping hazard. We had full classes. And so to have that many kids have backpacks on the floors, being able to move around or being able to exit the room in case of emergency, it was a tripping hazard. So we were very strict about it. Now we do allow students to have a backpack. We kind of moved away from being as strict prior to the pandemic because we were taking into consideration, at the time we were not one-to-one with computers. Kids had a lot of backpacks. We started seeing an increase in injuries, pinched nerves, kids trying to carry all these books in their hands because of the locker issue. Your locker may be way on the other side. So we said, you know what, maybe we can allow a smaller type. So what we did was we allowed the smaller drawstring backpacks. And what we thought was, okay, maybe that'll give them an opportunity to carry a little bit, maybe go to their locker maybe once or twice a day, as opposed to trying to go every hour because of the amount of materials that they had to carry. So that was the latest thing that we had done. And then when we went through the pandemic, when we came back, we allowed them. We did not have any restrictions because our main goal was to create a touch-free, socially distanced. We just wanted them to be able to get back and forth to class without having to touch lockers and things. So we opened it back up and just wanted them back in the building. And so we allowed the backpacks. Now that we're out, not technically out of the pandemic, now that we're moving closer back to normal policies, we still allow backpacks, but they have to be mesh or they have to be clear. And that is it. We don't even allow the drawstring because the drawstrings are not clear. So it has to be a clear or mesh backpack where we can sit through it. And they can carry it all day. So that's basically what we have in place at this current time.
And have you had any pushback from students? Have students been flexible on, the procedures, modifying with backpacks?
Well, yes, they have. And so, and it's unfortunate because I think a lot of the reason why they are cooperating is because of the unfortunate events that happened at Oxford. And unfortunately, we had a situation where we went into lockdown the same week of Oxford. So kids realize that a lot of our decisions are surrounded in us trying to really keep them safe. Now, we did have, a school our size, and I just think any size, you're going to have that small percent that's going to give pushback. And a lot of it's because of what they're used to. It's not necessarily an inconvenience. It's just that mindset of, well, I've been able to do this for so long. Why are you changing now? And then some of them did, which was pretty interesting, because I think we've all been impacted continuously to this day. Not resources, but it was a shortage basically. So we had some kids that were like, I can't get a clear or a mesh, because I believe a lot of schools were moving towards that same process. So it was a turnaround time in terms of the ordering, when they could order it and get it. And then we had a couple of students that financially, but we take care of that.
Right.
But for the most part, and we worked with them. We if they came to us and told us that, listen, I can't get it for a few days. We totally understood that. But what we also did that was a little different is that we rolled it out. We gave them time. We prepared them for it. We did not start that right at the beginning of the semester. We just kind of gave them a few, we told them this is what's coming and this is the date that we're going to start this. And we even did a test run. So it kind of worked out. We were, they were very cooperative during the process. So not too much pushback.
Absolutely. And I think for any schools listening that are looking to transition or change their policies, I think what I'm hearing that Dakota did that was so successful is communication and transparency. You communicated what you were going to do. You were very transparent about the reason, and then you allowed adequate time for students and parents to make that transition. So I think that's really important.
Yes, we did. We communicated with the parents. We sent information out. We were very creative. We did a visual board. We kind of involved our student leadership and said, listen, we want to roll this out in a way that the kids will embrace it, because we needed it. We needed them to be on board, and so they really took hold of it. So yes, we had some time. We allowed parents to ask questions, state their concerns, and we were ready and willing to answer any of them. So it did help. Communication is the key, especially in a building our size where you have parent involvement is high. Right. And so they want to know, and we want them to know why we make some of the decisions that we make.
Absolutely. So let's talk about lockers. You already touched on this a little bit, but what is your current policy on lockers, and how has that changed before, during, and now again, we keep saying after, we're still in the pandemic, but moving out of the pandemic?
Yes. So lockers, we do require each and every student to have a locker. We try to be we try to assign them in a very appropriate way because of the size of our building. So, that did change when we came back hybrid. We did not assign lockers. There were absolutely no lockers assigned. Obviously for cleaning purposes, the surf, touching. So that was kind of what contributed to the issue with them not being so ready to move back into the backpack, because they could freely carry their backpacks because we did not allow lockers. So, but now that we're back, we do still want them to have a locker, because, and I'm not sure if this was, I guess it's part of the question. One of the reasons why we needed them to have the locker. So we wanted to get back to some sense of normalcy, but we also understood that we were allowing them to carry their backpacks. So some kids, even though they have a locker, they do not go to the locker, right? There's no need. In addition to that, we're one-to-one now. So a lot of the books that they normally would check out, they don't have. Okay. So the locker becomes important because we did implement a no coat policy. Okay. So we especially during the winter months, obviously some of our coats in Michigan are huge. And so because of safety issues, we realized that once we did that, they needed a place to put their coat. And so right now we do we request that they use their lockers to put those type of items in. But some students are, they find a way around them. Some of them don't even come to school with a coat on, so they don't have to go to their locker. But we have this year given each and every student their own locker.
So let me ask you this, with a school your size, if students are mandated for the most part to use their lockers for coats, what type of passing time do you have in place to allow that?
Yeah, so we have a 6-minute passing time, which administratively, when I first started, I was really ambitious, still a little bit ambitious, but I'm getting a little older. So I would have so much sympathy for the kids that would rack up tardies and say, well, I can't get to my locker. So I would walk from the furthest point in the building as far as the locker to the other side of the building if they had a class. And it's pretty tight. I mean, you gotta be about your business. You cannot stop and talk. You have to go to the bathroom during that stretch of time. Not to mention our halls are full. So it is a stretch. So we work with students that bring those things to our attention, but we do, it's something that we are challenged on constantly, but it's doable. Another issue that we run into is we have a 9th grade center. And so our kids move between the buildings. Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you know Michigan, if it's cold, that child not only has to have time to get to their locker to get their coat, but they also have to have the time to travel from the 10-12 building to the 9th grade building and back. And so again, this is where communication is important, because we talk to our students, because what we didn't think about is we implemented the no coat policy. But when our 10-12 students travel over to the 9th grade center, they don't have a locker to put their coat, but they need a coat to get to the 9th grade center. And so we always, we appreciate and value the feedback that we get, and we always are able to find workarounds for a situation such as that. So.
Okay, wonderful. So hats, hoodies, and coats. We talked a little bit about coats, but I'm just curious, did your enforcement of dress code change in any way during the pandemic? And where are you at now with dress code?
I'm going to be honest with you, and I want to make sure I represent my team and my teachers well. We have waved the white flag on dress code right now. And I'm not happy to say that, because I am one of those administrators that do believe that part of our preparation in terms of preparing our students for the future is to implement some form of a dress code. I think we have to be cautious and careful, the language that we use and the expectations, because of the cultural differences and all these other things that come into play. But right now, and I support my principal, Kevin Koskis, in our district in terms of why we kind of pulled back. We realized early on that a lot of our kids coming into the building this fall were struggling with a lot of concerns and mental health issues regarding just the whole concept of being back into the building full time. Right. And so we just said, you know what, these kids have not been in the building. They have not been bogged down with things such as dress code. And so they've been able to kind of manage how their days look like for a long time without those restrictions in the building. And so we realized that a couple things that, one, although it is necessary to have a dress code policy, we did not want to risk the harm of risk the chance of harming someone by adding more issues to the day because they did not comply with the dress code policy. So we told our staff, we said, listen, if you have to assess the situation, you're going to see the kids more than us. You're going to be with them. And so we just ask that you do all that you can do to build relationships first. Right. Yes. And so that when it comes to an issue of a uniform violation or dress code policy, that you have the relationship and you've assessed that student's well-being before you send them out of the class and so it just became an issue where some of the students, really tested. Some of them were just being manipulative, but some of them really just were very fragile in terms of handling those type of things. And one of the problems that we did run into, and this is why, it became a sensitive topic for us, is we wanted the staff to understand that although we support dress code policies, tardy policies, that we knew that we would be tied up with contact tracing. And the concern was that if you constantly are writing students up for dress code, we did not have the staff or the ability at that time to manage those referrals in a timely fashion where the teachers didn't feel that they were being ignored. And in addition to the kids feeling like, well, I got written up, but they did nothing about it. So their policy is, not really, it's not valid. And so, that's exactly what happened in the beginning of the year. Our administrators were, we were just full days contact tracing from the time we stepped into the building into the time we left. And so we just did not have the time to manage those type of referrals. Obviously, fights and things of that nature, we had to put things on hold.
Mhm.
But we just kind of said, you know what, this is going to be something that we're just going to have to kind of push to the back burner. Now, there are those situations where if body parts are showing and things like that, and it's a true disruption to the school day, then we addressed it. But we just really wanted to, ask ourselves, what is priority right now? And unfortunately, the dress code policy did kind of take a back seat to that. It's really, one of those things where, the trends is what sets the tone. So we're seeing a lot of bellies these days because,
Yeah.
mid-drift shirts and those
Mhm.
things are back in style. So it's a challenge. We could literally spend our whole day
Oh,
right
absolutely. I bet.
student, and
I
we
bet.
just don't have the manpower to do
Right,
that right.
right.
So
So, but it sounds like you decided to choose your battle with this one.
we
And it appears to me that teaching and learning and mental health took precedence over, this dress code
It
issue.
did. And so we've had conversations. We met together with our sister school, Chippewa Valley. Our administrators got together and we kind of, they have a different approach. They, their building principal really posed a really important question. And it was, how much of what we're concerned about, how much is it really a disruption to the school day?
Right.
Is it really a disruption to the learning process, right? One of the things that we talked about was the hoodies and the hats. In the past, we had a no hoodie, no hat policy. So the kids challenged us on it. And they said, listen, your reasoning for doing that back in the day would be probably gang related or whatever the case may be. We thankfully don't have that issue. And then we said, well, we need to be able to identify you because we do have cameras. Well, we just spent a whole year masked up.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be honest with you, they won this one because I can identify a student that have a hoodie on and a hat, but a mask was problematic because it covers up important features and really you can't see anything but the eyes. And so we just started really taking a different approach to examining what we're doing and why we're doing it and what are we trying to achieve. And so you will see hats, you will see hoodies. Our expectation is we need to be able to identify you. And if we can see your face and we can identify you, then we're okay with it. Now, I'm all about empowering my teachers to do whatever they need to do in the classroom. So what we do is we also give teachers that opportunity to manage their classroom. And if they do ask a student to remove a hoodie, then the expectation is that students should remove the hoodie.
Mhm.
We do expect that. And so because, we don't know the different, each class has different needs depending on what they're trying to do. And so we didn't want our teachers to feel powerless. We wanted them to know that, they had a valid reason for asking a student to do something, to remove a hat, to remove a hoodie, that we were going to support them as long as they could articulate it and really, make us understand why the decision was made to have them remove it.
Right.
And so when we do communicate that, when I have students, and teachers are amazing because so many of them, they reach out and they ask, how should we approach this? And I'm all about relationship. I say, have a conversation with the student, tell them why. Sometimes you don't always have the opportunity to tell them why, but sometimes when you can, they will understand and they will do what you ask them to do. And so what we do is they say, well, can you talk to them? Can you, I would give them a warning. So when I have time, I will bring the student down and we'll have conversation. But my conversation with them is that teacher is the authority in the room, and if they are doing everything they can to maintain a certain level of, of order and respect, if they ask you to do something, the expectation is that you do it, right?
Mhm.
You can't, be insubordinate. You can be, but you're gonna end up in my office. So we try to play both sides. We hear the students, we hear their sides, but we support the teachers, and we trust that whatever reason they're asking, making that request, that we're going to support them.
So I love that you support the teachers and especially give them autonomy in their classrooms to do what, they feel is best, but also encouraging and almost requiring those relationships, because that's so important to be able to have those conversations and those teachable moments. Because again, a lot of the reason that we enforce some of these policies is so that we can teach certain lessons to our students.
Absolutely.
And how to operate outside of high school.
One of the things I impress upon my teachers, and I'm thankful for this, Lance. I had one of my amazing, I consider him a friend, and he is a coworker. He's in my math department, and he came to me and he said, "Ebony, one of the things about you is," he said, you are a teacher that just happens to be an administrator." So they respect me as an administrator, but they see me as a teacher, and I really still do have a teacher's heart. And that's one of the things I try to impress upon them. And I say, listen, there are times when you come to administration because you have a need, or something may have happened. Maybe you didn't do something right. We have conversation with you. We build relationship with you, because we know that when the time comes to have a tough conversation or uncomfortable conversation, that relationship is going to be important, right? For you to be able to trust me that if I tell you something that's for your own good, or if I have to work with you on a tough situation, that we have a relationship established where you trust me. And I said, that's the same thing we're asking for you to do with the kids. Is that sometimes you're not going to see eye to eye, but if in the beginning, if you have the best possible relationship that you can have, it's not going to be 100%. We are just not going to get along with everyone. But in those times when you can build relationships and understand each other, it makes those tough conversations easier. And I know I've been able to get teachers to do things that some others may not, because of my relationship.
Absolutely.
And so I want them to see it the same way. To me, it's no different. And many of our teachers do well with it. And that's why many of my teachers, I do not get referrals from them. I do not have issues. And if I do, it is huge. That child probably can't even say anything, because I'm like, Miss So-and-so never writes a student up. This has to be serious. But it all hinges on relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's segue into IDs. Are students required to carry these at all times at school? What's the policy on identification?
I tell you, Nina, one of the things that I love but also struggle with, Dakota, is our size. Yes. I've had the opportunity to work in 2 different high schools. So it is not an unrealistic expectation to expect students to show IDs.
Yes.
But when you're talking about 2,700 kids on your campus, not kids, I'll give them the respect, teenagers, adolescents, young adults, however you want to, I forget my ID sometimes,
Right. Right.
It is problematic to have kids, require them to have their ID, because we have to be prepared at any given moment to print new IDs when they lose them. What's the difference? I always ask myself when they come up with policies, not just I, but our administrative team, okay, what does this look like when students are not compliant?
Yes.
And sometimes what that looks like becomes more disruptive than the actual thing that we're trying to achieve. So yes, we do. The expectation is to have an ID. And the reason is they need the IDs to get their lunch. They need the IDs to check their check out books and things of that nature. But my previous principal, Paul Sibley, shared with me that during the times when they requested or required kids to walk around with lanyards, that is something administration has to manage, right? So how do you constantly stop kids and ask them, do you have your ID? And if they don't, it was just too much. So the expectation is that they have an ID. Now, these kids are blessed because you know what they can do. they can take a picture of their ID on their phone. Now we
Yeah.
know they do not leave the house without the phone. And so it just works for us. So we say, okay, you're going to get the ID during Cougar days. The expectation is that you have an ID. But if you know that you can't keep up with it, then then if you have the phone, take a picture of it on your phone and be prepared to show your ID when necessary. And that seems to work for us. It really does.
And that's great. So let's talk about the campus. You've touched on the campus size a couple times. Are students allowed to leave campus? I know you mentioned, going to the ninth grade center, but is there a closed campus in terms of lunch? And then a follow-up question I have is, what are the procedures for visitors entering the building? So when students leave the building to go to the ninth grade center or maybe a CTE opportunity or something of that sort, what is the procedure for them or other visitors when they return to the building?
Yes. So we actually do. As far as I have been there, I'm not exactly sure if it was this way when Dakota first opened, but since I've been there since 2013, we do have a closed campus. Okay. We have a lot of movement on our campus for a couple of reasons. One, we do have students that we participate in dual enrollment. Okay. We participate in early college. We also have students that have to leave the building early due to co-op opportunities. And so that in itself creates a lot of movement. So we do not allow our students to leave for lunch. Okay. We have, I have to admit, kids are, it's a challenge with a building this size to know who's coming and going. Now, in the past, when we had enough security, we could manage it. We really could. Students had co-op passes. Our parking lots are designated. So we have a particular parking lot that if you are a co-op student, we know that at the beginning of the year, we issue you a parking pass in that lot. So that controlled the movement. We know that co-op students or students that had the permission to leave the building were moving from a certain lot. And so we could put one of our security guards there. We had quite a few security guards. I'll talk about that later in terms of the contract and how the pandemic and the employment situation is impacting what we do in Dakota. And so we would have one there to make sure those kids are coming and going appropriately, but we will also have one in our larger lot, which is near our stadium, because we wanted to be able to catch those kids that were trying to sneak out for lunch. And so every year we do. We have kids that try to leave. In the past, prior to the pandemic, we were very strict about it, and we still are, that if you left campus and you came back, we could usually tell because they would have their Starbucks or some type of Slurpee in their hand, that they will get escorted to the office, and their car was subject to being searched. Their persons could be searched, and they would get a discipline. It was a progressive discipline. It would start off with a detention. But I think the humiliating part for them is to understand that we don't know what your intentions are for leaving. We don't know if you're leaving to go, involve yourself in some type of legal activity. That's more movement in terms of whether or not you're bringing weapons into the building. So we had to just had to get them to understand it wasn't to make them miserable. Too much movement is just not good in a building that size. Right. So we had a security guard stationed at every door. And it really took off after the Parkland incident, where our district did approve for us to hire more security, and our whole security layout changed, where we really had the manpower to manage whether or not kids were coming and going and leaving our campus without a pass or being excused. That's another situation too, where sometimes parents call their kids out for various reasons. They're driving, so they can leave and go to their own orthodontist appointment. So all this becomes a huge issue to manage that type of movement. Now, what we've done to try to eliminate all the movement throughout the doors, our academic doors are closed. You cannot exit or enter in those doors during the school day. We only have exit and entry into the atrium doors, where we know that we have security guards managing who's coming in and out of the building. And so it does impact what we do close campus wise. Now, as far as our security, we have the main entrance, where we have two security guards. In the past we would have two security guards. Right now we only have one. That was their job, is to stay there, because we do participate in a state ID. It's well, we just changed companies. I can't think of the company right off the name, but we have where we scan your ID and it does a security check on your ID, and you do have to get a badge to enter. So we monitor all visitors coming and going, and they it also attaches a background check to it. So we kind of upgraded that system with the new company that we're with. And as far as our students traveling from the 9th grade building, there are only two ways they can get in. They have to come in through the north doors, which again, we have a security guard posted there the whole day, or the main entrance where our security check is, and those students do have to show their IDs to get in. So it's a process. They get frustrated because we realize that, and this came from a student. So again, we have a great community where students, after the Oxford incident happened, they came to us and they said, listen, you guys just assume that those kids that are coming in are kids from the 9th grade center. And they just said that they didn't feel safe.
Right.
And that they wanted us to ask our security guards to do a better job at making sure all those kids that are coming and going during the day are the kids that's supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And we totally understood. Mm-hmm. And we checked their IDs. So they have to have their IDs to enter and exit during the school day. I'm trying to think what else. Now, it's becoming a little problematic because we do contract this out. Those are not district positions. And so due to the wage, people are exercising their right to explore other employment opportunities. And unfortunately, the company that we contract with, they just, from what I'm understanding, they don't offer competitive wage. And so it becomes very problematic for us because, one, from day to day, we don't know if they're going to send us the adequate amount of staff to post at each door. Right. So that becomes more that our hall monitors are becoming more involved in the process when we are short staffed, because that is something we simply cannot compromise on. Mm-hmm. And then another issue is the training aspect of it. We have golf carts that we use. Our security, they patrol the lots, making sure they are appropriate in terms of how they address students and, ask them, are they, do they have a pass? So we usually try to do a quick training session for our security guards for relationship purposes. We try to diffuse and not ignite. And with security guards coming, new ones coming every week, sometimes every day, it just creates a situation where we're not getting the same quality of service that we have in the past. We are sympathetic to the security company because, again, they're just like any other corporation at this point where workers are choosing other options. But at the end of the day, we have a need to secure our building. And that is something that we're constantly in communication with our central office and the security company to figure out what can we do to make things better concerning this process.
Right. Absolutely. So I have a follow-up question. You answered my security question already. So my follow-up question is just a random question because a lot of people ask this around the state. Do you allow Doordash at Dakota High School?
We do not. We do not allow Doordash. But, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, they try us.
Yes, I know. And that's why I asked, because administrators always bring that up, and they're struggling with this issue in terms of how to deny or not allow Doordash.
So we turn them away. So we have Jimmy John's Right Bus, and that became an issue. With the amount of students, again, we have over two of our lunches, we have 3 lunches. 2 of our lunches have over 700 kids. We have 30 minutes to get them fed. So we're very sympathetic to the fact that, listen, the lines are long. Some of our kids are very, I don't want to say spoiled, but they are used to a different type of lunch.
Yes.
And so they want, whatever it is they choose that day, they want it. And so to know that they have DoorDash and Uber Eats, that was just no way we can manage it. It was just no way. That was more pressure, more work for our security, trying to figure out whose lunches who. We do allow parents to drop off lunches. We do allow that. But no, we do not. And when kids attempt to do it, we are parents. All of my whole administrative team have parents, so we understand how kids are going to try you and test you. And so a couple times we ask them questions and we let them know. But we turn food away. We turn food away. We have contacted some of our local establishments. We ask them, out of respect for what we're trying to do to secure our building, we ask that they not take orders from students that they know is going to be delivered, because they will get turned away. And so we just try to stay on it. But every year, every semester, we have students that test their boundaries. And we just deal with it accordingly.
So are there any other safety procedures you would like to share with other administrators around the state that you think would be beneficial for other administrators to hear?
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to share is some of the things that we have currently implemented regarding the ALICE training and, all of that. So I want to just make sure, bear with me. I'm trying to get to that part of my notes. I wanted to make sure that I painted a big picture, because again, with us being the size that we are, I think a lot of the things that we do, even if the school is not that size, if we can manage to secure our building the way that we do every day, it's beneficial to other schools to maybe consider it. One thing I want to point out is that we do have walkie-talkies, which is very important. So our hall monitors have a walkie-talkie. Each administrator has a walkie-talkie. Our secretaries, so we use those quite often. Those have become a huge help. If a teacher or a hall monitor radios, then we know the location. If we're from just day-to-day business, not so much security, but it does help trying to locate students. Walkie-talkies are a huge help to communicate, between all our teams. We also have 2 school resource officers. They have their Macomb County Sheriff's walkie-talkie, but they also have our walkie-talkie. And so during our lockdown, it was huge to be able to talk to them, because it literally allows communication instantly. And not being able to pick up the phones. Sometimes our phones do go out. So the walkie-talkies are always a solid source of communication. And so that definitely helps. Another thing that we have done with our some of the funding that we had come through is we have what we call blue pool stations in our hallways, and they can be activated if there's an alert situation. This is separate from the fire alarm, right? But it works pretty much the same. So if there is an immediate threat in a hallway, we have different pool stations. It's digital. And so what happens is once that pool station is activated, if that lever is pulled, we have, and I'm not a technical person, so I probably won't use the appropriate words, but I think I'll do a good picture of painting. There is a control center, a digital control center that lets us know where that pull station was, so we can send help, or we know exactly where to go. But there's also an audio portion to it that lets us know that something is going on. So when you think about some of the school threats that have happened over the course of the years, we are constantly looking for ways to address it. Because if you think about it, if a situation happens, a delay in communication, that student or that adult that's in that immediate area has to then get to a phone if they don't have a walkie-talkie, or vice versa. So although we know there will be some delay, we try to have all of these things in place. So the pool stations are the newest addition to our school campus security. And then we've also worked on different languages that we use regarding lockdown situations. So it's just constant. And I tell you, it makes me, nothing is absolute, nothing is 100%, but I 100% stand by the decisions that Chippewa Valley School District is making for schools our size, such as Chippewa and Dakota, to do all that they can do to create a safe environment, a proactive, safe environment. And so those are some of the things that I would definitely encourage other schools to consider, in addition to the training that we put the kids through, the conversations, and constantly reminding them of the different things that we have in place. Because once it becomes part of their understanding and they can rehearse it, then, God forbid, in the event of emergency, they will, the hope and the goal is that they just act. Right.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about what
Yeah.
to do. They know we have a plan in place.
Absolutely.
And it's just almost like, second nature that they know what to do. And so as uncomfortable as it is for a lot of our kids that struggle with mental health, doing those drills, we still do them. We provide a safe environment for them. We try to do what we can to support them, but it's necessary because at the end of the day, we are confident that it will be a huge help to reduce or eliminate or reduce the issue of a threat.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put Ms. Carter on the spot a little here because I failed to mention my signature questions at the end that I like to ask every person that I interview. And I know this has been such a long and informative interview, but I can't end without asking you these two questions. So my first question is, if you had the ear of every person in the world, what one thing would you want them to know about the specific work that you do and or the work of school staff in general?
If I had the ear of the world,
yes,
it would be, and I know, and I'm not really big on cliches, but this one, it really does take a village. It really does take a village. When you think about our size, of what we do, we are with kids all day, 5 days a week, and it's a little different, for secondary. But anything, let me back up. One thing that I want parents in the community to understand is, although there are some people that made the decision to go into education and it wasn't their gift, it wasn't something that they were passionate about, that's within the industry. That the vast majority of us wake up every day with the intentions to pour into your children, to keep them safe, to love them, to care for them, and to be intentional about having a positive outcome. I need the world to know that is the heart of an educator. And at any given moment, when we are not displaying that, it's not that we weren't there. We have to step back and look at what changed. And right now, education is in a very critical point because we have people that make sacrifices every day, time away from their family, financial sacrifices. I'm not even going to get into that whole piece about the finances, but we still show up every day with the heart to take care of your kids and spend time with your kids more than sometimes we spend with our own. And to be accused, ridiculed, attacked, belittled for something that we absolutely are passionate about is draining. And so if I had the ear, I would ask them to understand, I know every service industry is being challenged beyond their threshold, but your children spend a significant amount of time in the building with very few adults. And I'm speaking specifically to Dakota because I have over 2,700 kids. I have maybe 250, 260 staff. We need everybody on board. We need as many people to understand that collectively working together is the only way that we can have the expected outcomes. That comes to safety, that comes to educating your kid, that comes to supporting them emotionally. Please don't look at us as the enemy. Please understand that some of the decisions that we have to make may not feel good to you, but understand that a lot of thought is put into it for the greater good. And the greater good always centers around what's best for these children. And so I would ask them to consider that before they accuse, before they, focus so much on their need. And I know our needs are always important individually, But again, they have to understand that we come with the intentions of meeting the needs of as many of our students as we can. But the reality is we can't be everything to everyone. Somebody's not going to be happy. But please know the pureness of what we do and the pureness of the decisions that we make, and find ways to work with us.
Yes.
Ask questions. Ask questions. And at the end of the day, it would help if we could sometimes get the benefit of the doubt. We have some great parents. We have some amazing parents and community members. But Nina, I tell you, in this day and time, the parents that don't understand what we do and why we do it, when they come for us, it's exhausting.
Yes.
And it's contributing to a lot of what teachers and administrators and support staff, hall monitors, lunch staff, they are tired. And sometimes they just want to know that the parents understand and that they have our backs.
Yes.
Hold us accountable. When we're out of order, we're out of order. But please understand that at the end of the day, they can just remember that we have options, but there is a significant amount of people that get up every day and choose to step in that building and be a support to your child.
The realness and power in that answer. I can't wait to hear your answer on this final question. If you had the power to make one dream in education come true, no matter how massive or small, what would that dream be?
Oh my goodness. Oh, you these are some really good questions. Oh my goodness. And that's interesting because I'm gonna be honest with you, Nina. I have stopped dreaming, and that's not good. Because I think a few years ago I would have been able to answer that. I've stopped dreaming, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's exhausting to want something and to have the lens to want something that you, amongst other professionals in your industry, to want something so bad and really believe that it would make a difference, only to constantly know and be told or see the evidence that dream that you have is not going to, so you get to the point where you stop dreaming. And so I wish that I could answer that. I don't know what that would be, because it's because things have voices and requests and needs have been pushed to the back burner so much that is so much that's needed. But let me think if it would be one. Let me get back to that.
Let me ask a follow-up then. How do we re-spark those dreams? How do we let's talk about some, and I know we have to end at some point, but let's talk about new administrators coming into the field. How do we keep that zest, that energy that they have in the beginning? Because I know that's very difficult. Like you mentioned, a lot of the stressors, a lot of the challenges. These are new challenges that we never had to face, and we never faced in the past. So I guess how do we keep that energy?
Right. So if you'll allow me, I would, I'm going to speak from an administrative point, but I want to go from my teacher's lens. I know a lot of people talk about finances, and teachers should be paid more and things like that. And I know each and every individual district do the best they can with the funding. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm just now getting to the point where I'm digging deep into understanding how those things work, because I want to be able to engage in those conversations. But I think it moves beyond just funding. I think that valuing a teacher's voice, right? I think that a lot of times we as administrators, whether it be building level, central office, sometimes it becomes so easy to forget what a teacher has to do to juggle their day. And so we get lost in the whole concept of meeting state expectations, preparing for observations and evaluations and, these hours and doing this, that we forget to support the teacher and encourage them and value them in the art of just being an amazing teacher, right? So whatever that thing is to do that, if I could dream, that would be to give teachers more power and trust them. We hire them. We vet them out through the interviewing process, right? Trust their professionalism, right? We know that there has to be some accountability, but I think a lot of times we get lost in, what's going on, that we forget that we've hired some amazing teachers. And instead of giving them all these different tasks to do, just tell them what the expected outcome is and let them figure out how to get there. We say that all the time. Right. The problem is with the shortage of teachers and people just, all the different things that's impacting education, we tend to, have to provide more support and watch them a little more, because some people are entering in education that don't have that passion or that anointing to do it. Right. So that's from the teacher's lens, from the administrative lens. And I can only speak for me. I started in 2015 and I was eager I mean, there was nothing that you couldn't ask me to do. I really think it's important for districts to help administrators set healthy boundaries. You go into it. It's no different than a teacher. When you go in as a teacher, you're gonna save the world. You're gonna have each and every child. And I thank God for my mom. My mom is a woman of wisdom, and my mother said, "You need to, a remnant." She said, and I know that totally goes against everything that you guys stand for, because you go into it trying to save all. She said, but you cannot sustain that. Right. You can't. She said, a remnant. She said, you got to focus. She said, you do the best. But she said, when you put your heart into it and you try to be everything to everybody, that's what causes the burnout. And that's what happens with administration, especially in a building my size. You want to be at the basketball games. You want to be at the football games. You want to go to the plays. You want to be, you want to be visible, because those are those things that we do to build relationships, because we don't have the advantage of being in the classroom. Absolutely. But then there are those times that you carry those heavy situations on your heart that you really do need to be committed to secluding yourself and pulling away and taking care of you. And a lot of times, just the nature of administrators, when classes are not full, what do? When we have classes that are not covered, we have to step in to become everything to everybody. Yes. We're short hall monitors. We're out in the halls. If we don't have lunch aides to clean the tables, right? There is no end to what we would do to keep our buildings functioning. Right. So it is nearly impossible to continue with the same commitment and zeal when an industry such as the educational industry is taking a huge hit in terms of personnel. So whether we like it or not, we've got to learn how to set some healthy boundaries. It is for our good and for the good of the organization, because it will lead to burnout. And if you are an amazing administrator, an amazing teacher, and you don't set those boundaries, then it becomes a loss, because then you leave, whether you want to or not. Wow. So it's almost like ration. How do you ration yourself out enough to get the job done through the day, but keep enough of yourself protected so that you can live and see another day as an educator, right? Yeah. Though that's why dreaming, I'm like, it's hard to answer that one big thing, because there's so many needs. There's need for legislation to change. There's need for ideals about what public education look like to change. Yeah. There's so many facets that impact what we do on a day-to-day basis that it is difficult to see what that one thing is. So I'm sorry, I just didn't. Oh,
that's an even better answer than I could have ever imagined. So thank you. And Ms. Carter, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to talk with me today. It has not only been informative, but it has been therapy for me today. So I thank you.
Likewise for me. Likewise for me.
I do thank you for speaking, honestly, with transparency and from the heart. I thank you for that. And I think administrators across the state will also benefit and appreciate that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.